I returned home early from my important business trip in Chicago, excited to surprise Maria. The house felt unusually empty and quiet as I stepped inside. When I reached our bedroom, I noticed her closet half empty and dresser drawers open. Confused, I called out her name with no answer. Then my phone buzzed. A text from her read, "I'm moving in with someone more successful. Don't contact me." The shock and confusion quickly turned to betrayal, but instead of begging her to come back, I immediately called my lawyer. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how this story ends. I promise it's worth it. I grew up in Boston, in a middle-class household, the first in my family to attend college. My parents worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, instilling in me the values of hard work and perseverance. When I was accepted to Boston University on a partial scholarship, I still had to work nights at a local diner to cover the remaining costs. Despite this demanding schedule, I graduated with honors in computer science. After graduation, I started at an entry-level position at a local tech company. The pay wasn't great, but I was passionate about building my career from the ground up. Every day I arrived early and stayed late, constantly learning new skills and taking on additional responsibilities. My dedication didn't go unnoticed, and I steadily climbed the corporate ladder. By the time I met Maria, I was 29 years old and had recently been promoted to project manager. I wasn't wealthy by any means, but I had a stable job with good prospects, a modest apartment that I owned, and a reliable car that was fully paid off. I had also been disciplined about saving and investing, following my father's advice to always prepare for the future. I prided myself on financial responsibility rather than flashy displays of wealth. My colleagues often splurged on luxury cars and extravagant vacations, but I preferred building security through smart investments and living within my means. This approach allowed me to sleep well at night, knowing I was building a solid foundation for my future. I first met Maria at my college roommate Brian's wedding 5 years ago. She was a bridesmaid, a friend of the bride from her marketing job. I noticed her immediately during the ceremony, but it wasn't until the reception that Brian introduced us. Maria worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized company, and her passion for her work was immediately evident in how she spoke about it. We ended up talking at the bar for hours that night, barely noticing when most of the other guests had left. She was not only beautiful, but intelligent and ambitious. She shared her dreams of eventually becoming a marketing director, and I was drawn to her drive. There was an effortless flow to our conversation, jumping from work ambitions to favorite books to childhood memories. By the end of the night, I knew I wanted to see her again. We exchanged numbers, and I called her the very next day to ask her out properly. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. I still remember how she looked that night, wearing a simple blue dress that matched her eyes perfectly. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. We discovered a shared love for hiking old films and trying new restaurants. Weekends were spent exploring New England together, from Cape Cod beaches to Vermont mountains. Maria challenged me intellectually and supported me emotionally. After a year of dating, I proposed at that same Italian restaurant where we had our first date. She said yes, immediately, tears in her eyes. The first 2 years of our marriage were everything I had hoped for. We had a beautiful but modest wedding at a converted barn in western Massachusetts. Maria had initially wanted something more lavish, but she agreed when I showed her how saving on the wedding meant we could put a down payment on our first home together, a charming 3-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood. Those early years were filled with the joy of building our life together. We painted every room in the house ourselves, laughing as we accidentally got more paint on each other than on the walls. We established traditions like Sunday morning pancakes and monthly date nights. We supported each other through work challenges, celebrating every small victory and providing comfort during setbacks. We seemed aligned on our financial goals too. We both contributed to a joint account for household expenses, while maintaining separate accounts for personal spending. We talked about having children in a few years once we were more established in our careers. I thought we were on the same page about creating a secure future before expanding our family. For our 3rd anniversary, I surprised Maria with a trip to California wine country. It was more extravagant than our usual vacations, but I had saved specifically for this occasion. It was during this trip that I noticed the first subtle shift in Maria's attitude. As we toured a particularly exclusive winery, she commented how nice it would be to live that lifestyle all the time, not just on special occasions. Looking back, I should have recognized that this marked the beginning of changes in our relationship. Shortly after we returned from California, Maria landed a new job at a high-profile marketing agency. I was genuinely happy for her. The position came with a significant salary increase and the career advancement she had been working toward. With this new job came a new social circle. Maria began spending time with colleagues who lived very different lifestyles than ours. They drove luxury cars, wore designer clothes, and vacationed in exotic locations. Gradually, she started making comments about our home being too small compared to her coworkers' downtown condo, or how my practical sedan was embarrassing next to her boss's Tesla. At first, I tried to address her concerns constructively. I showed her our savings growth and investment portfolio, explaining that I was building real wealth rather than just displaying it. But increasingly, she seemed dismissive of my achievements and impatient with our financial timeline. What had once felt like shared values now revealed a fundamental difference in our perspectives. Arguments about money became more frequent. When I received a promotion but chose to invest the additional income rather than upgrade our lifestyle, Maria accused me of lacking ambition. She couldn't understand why I wasn't interested in impressing others with visible symbols of success. The distance between us grew wider with each disagreement. Then came the Chicago business trip. My company was pitching for a major contract, and as project manager, I was selected to lead the presentation. It was originally scheduled to last 5 days with extensive preparation and multiple meetings with the potential client. I spent weeks preparing for this presentation, staying late at the office, and sometimes working through weekends. Maria seemed distracted and uninterested in my work, often canceling our dinner plans because of networking events with her colleagues. I was disappointed by her lack of support, but focused on making the presentation successful. When I arrived in Chicago, I threw myself into final preparations. The stakes were high, not just for me, but for my entire team. The presentation was scheduled for the third day of the trip with follow-up meetings afterward. To my relief and pride, the presentation went exceptionally well. The client was impressed with our proposal and indicated they wanted to move forward immediately, eliminating the need for the follow-up meetings. With 2 days suddenly free in my schedule, I decided to fly home early and surprise Maria. Maybe this could be a chance to reconnect, to celebrate my success together, and perhaps rekindle the closeness we had lost. I booked the next available flight back to Boston, feeling optimistic about turning things around in our marriage. During the flight home, I thought about what to say to Maria. I wanted her to understand that my approach to career and finances didn't mean I lacked ambition. It meant I valued security and substance over appearances. I hoped she could see that there was room for both of our perspectives in our marriage. The taxi ride from Logan Airport to our home was filled with anticipation. I stopped at a florist near our house and bought a bouquet of lilies, Maria's favorite. As the taxi pulled up to our driveway, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I had no idea what waited for me inside. The house was silent as I unlocked the front door. "Maria," I called out, receiving only the echo of my own voice in response. Setting down my suitcase and the flowers in the entryway, I moved through each room of our home. The living room looked normal, though I noticed some decorative items missing from the shelves. It wasn't until I reached our bedroom that the reality became clear. Her side of the closet was half empty. Designer dresses and shoes that had once filled the space were gone. Several dresser drawers stood open, hastily emptied of their contents. I checked her jewelry box and found it missing most of the pieces I had given her over the years, though curiously she had left behind the diamond earrings from our first anniversary. In the bathroom, her expensive skincare products and makeup were gone. Moving through the house with increasing dread, I noticed other absences. The framed photo of us in California was missing, though the wedding album lay discarded on the floor by the bookshelf. The painting she had insisted we buy from her friend's art show, despite its exorbitant price tag, had been removed from the wall, leaving a conspicuous empty space. I walked out to the garage, already knowing what I would find. The space where her white Audi usually parked was empty. The car had been a point of contention 6 months earlier when she insisted on upgrading from her perfectly functional Honda. I had argued that it was an unnecessary expense, but eventually relented when she offered to pay the difference from her personal account. Back in the bedroom, I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, our bed, trying to make sense of the scene around me. That's when my phone buzzed with an incoming text. Maria's name appeared on the screen, and with shaking hands, I opened the message. I'm moving in with someone more successful. Jason appreciates the finer things in life and can give me the lifestyle I deserve. I've been settling for mediocrity with you for too long. Your lack of ambition and constant worrying about saving for some distant future has held me back. I deserve better than waiting years for things I can have now. Don't try to contact me or change my mind. It's over. I read the message 3 times, each word like a physical blow. Jason. It had to be Jason Parker, an investment banker she had mentioned from her new workplace. She had described him as visionary and someone who understands how to truly succeed. I had thought nothing of it at the time. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. The bedroom suddenly felt too small, too full of memories. I moved to the living room and sank into the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The silence of the house pressed in around me. The flowers I had bought lay forgotten in the entryway, already beginning to wilt in the warm air. The initial shock gave way to a wave of memories. Maria laughing as we painted our kitchen. Maria asleep on my shoulder during a long drive to Maine. Maria's expression when I proposed. Had any of it been real? Had she ever truly shared my values? Or had she simply been biding her time until something better came along? As these thoughts swirled, my phone began ringing. It wasn't Maria, but my friend Alan. Shane, are you okay? I just heard about Maria from Jessica. Jessica was a mutual friend who worked at the same agency as Maria. The fact that our friends knew before I did added another layer of humiliation to the betrayal. When did you find out? I asked numbly. Jessica told me yesterday. Apparently Maria's been talking about leaving for weeks. I tried calling you, but couldn't reach you. I was in Chicago. Just got back early to surprise her. Oh man, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over? More calls followed. Other friends checking in, each conversation revealing that Maria had been planning her exit for some time. She had told some people she felt trapped in our marriage. Others heard that she and Jason had been seeing each other for at least 2 months. With each call, the carefully constructed reality of my marriage crumbled further. Initially, there was an overwhelming urge to call or text her, to beg her to reconsider, to promise I would change, buy the things she wanted, be the person she needed. My finger hovered over her contact information several times. But something stopped me each time. A voice in my head that sounded remarkably like my father's. Never chase someone who doesn't value you, son. Self-respect is worth more than any relationship. I had always admired my father's quiet dignity even during the toughest times. When his business partner had cheated him years ago, he hadn't lashed out or sought revenge. He had simply taken the appropriate legal actions and moved forward with his life. His response had been strategic, not emotional. Drawing on his example, I put down my phone and instead called Thomas Williams, my law school friend who now worked as a family attorney. Within an hour, he was sitting in my living room, legal pad in hand, listening as I recounted the day's events and showed him Maria's text. First things first, Thomas said, his professional demeanor a steadying presence. We need to protect your assets. How are your accounts set up? We have a joint checking for household expenses. Everything else is separate. My investments, retirement accounts, they're all in my name only. Good. And the house. In my name. I bought it before we were married. She never pushed to be added to the deed. Even better. Did you have a prenup? Yes. My parents insisted. Maria wasn't happy about it, but she signed. Thomas made notes as we talked occasionally, asking clarifying questions about our finances and the prenuptial agreement. As the shock began to wear off, I found myself thinking more clearly. Thomas suggested I check our financial records while he was there to establish if there had been any unusual activity. What I found sent another shock through me. Email receipts showed room charges at expensive hotels downtown on days Maria had claimed to be working late. Credit card statements revealed dinners at restaurants far pricier than we normally frequented, always for two people. There were shopping sprees at luxury boutiques, and even a receipt for a weekend getaway to New York, all within the last 2 months. More disturbing was the discovery that she had withdrawn nearly $20,000 from our joint account over the past few weeks. It represented most of the balance, though thankfully not the bulk of our savings, which were in accounts she couldn't access. I also found emails between Maria and Jason planning their future together. In one particularly painful exchange, she complained about my pathetic caution and how excited she was to be with someone who actually knows how to live. Jason's responses were full of promises about the luxurious lifestyle they would share. What Maria didn't know, what I had never felt the need to explicitly tell her, was just how successful my cautious approach had been. Beyond our visible lifestyle, I had built a substantial investment portfolio. My company also had a generous stock option program that had performed exceptionally well. On paper, I was worth considerably more than my modest lifestyle suggested. As Thomas reviewed the prenuptial agreement, his expression shifted to one of surprised satisfaction. "This is remarkably solid, Shane. It clearly states that in case of infidelity, the unfaithful party forfeits claims to any assets acquired during the marriage. With the evidence we've gathered today, Maria has put herself in a very vulnerable legal position." For the first time since reading Maria's text, I felt a glimmer of control returning. I wasn't powerless in this situation. I had options. And unlike Maria, I had prepared for the unexpected. The next morning, I met Thomas at his downtown office to formalize our strategy. We filed for divorce, immediately citing infidelity with the evidence we had gathered. Thomas prepared documents freezing the joint account to prevent further withdrawals and drafted a comprehensive inventory of assets, including items Maria had taken when she left. "We need to document everything," Thomas explained. "The items she took, the money she withdrew, all of it will factor into the final settlement." While Thomas handled the legal paperwork, I contacted a locksmith to change the locks on the house. Thomas assured me this was legal given the circumstances, especially since the house was solely in my name and Maria had clearly abandoned the residence. "What about her remaining belongings?" I asked. "We'll document everything and store it safely. She'll have legal access to her personal property, but she'll need to coordinate with me to retrieve it." I took personal time off work, explaining to my sympathetic boss that I was dealing with a sudden family emergency. The support from my workplace was immediate and compassionate, offering me the space I needed without questions. My parents called from Florida, where they had retired, offering to fly up immediately. I assured them I was handling things but promised to visit them soon. Their unwavering support provided an emotional anchor during the chaos. Friends rallied around me too, with Alan insisting on staying over that first night so I wouldn't be alone in the empty house. While I maintained a deliberate silence on social media, Maria was doing the opposite. Through mutual friends, I saw her posts, flaunting her new lifestyle. Pictures of champagne, brunches, shopping bags from designer stores, and cozy dinners with Jason filled her Instagram. The captions spoke of finally living authentically and being with someone who supports my dreams. Each post was a deliberate dig, a public relations campaign to justify her actions. That first night after Alan left was the hardest. The house felt cavernous and unfamiliar without Maria's presence. I slept on the couch, unable to face our bed. But the morning brought a strange sense of resolve. I woke early, went for a long run, and returned home with a clearer mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that perhaps losing Maria wasn't losing everything. Perhaps it was the beginning of something else entirely. By mid-afternoon, on the second day, the legal machinery was in motion. Thomas had arranged for Maria to be served divorce papers at Jason's downtown condo. The documents included notice of the frozen joint account and copies of the prenuptial agreement, highlighting the infidelity clause. The court date for a preliminary hearing was set for the following month. I imagined her face as she received the envelope, her gradual realization that her carefully planned exit strategy had overlooked critical details. She had left with her clothes, jewelry, and car, thinking she was taking everything of value. She hadn't realized that legally she was leaving with almost nothing. The notifications from the bank about the frozen account must have reached her around the same time. According to the terms of our prenup, she would need to account for the $20,000 she had withdrawn and potentially return it as part of the settlement. The first message from Maria came approximately 48 hours after her departure. A terse text. "What did you do to our account?" I didn't respond. Thomas had advised against any direct communication that could be used against me later. More messages followed, increasing in urgency and emotion. "You can't just lock me out of my own money." Then, "This isn't fair, Shane. I contributed to that account too." And finally, "Please call me. We need to talk about this." I forwarded each message to Thomas without replying. He assured me this was exactly how these situations typically unfolded. The reality of consequences beginning to sink in. Then came the financial revelations that I hadn't anticipated. Through our banking app, I could see Maria attempting multiple large purchases that were declined due to reaching her credit limit. Apparently, the lifestyle she had been secretly leading with Jason had maxed out her personal credit cards. She had been counting on continued access to our joint funds. Even more surprising was learning through mutual friends that Jason's flashy lifestyle was largely smoke and mirrors. Despite his job title and expensive tastes, he was reportedly deep in debt himself, leveraged to maintain appearances. Their relationship had been built on a shared appreciation for luxury, but neither had the sustainable means to maintain it. The calls began on the third day. First occasional, and during business hours. Then increasingly frequent at all hours of the day and night. 27 calls in a single day, according to my phone log. I let each go to voicemail following Thomas's advice. The voicemails traced a clear, emotional journey. The first few were angry and accusatory. "How dare you freeze our account? You're being spiteful and childish." But as days passed, the tone shifted dramatically. "Shane, please call me back. I made a terrible mistake. I miss you. Can we talk about this? I didn't mean the things I said." I was confused. On the fifth day, Maria showed up at the house, only to find the locks changed. A neighbor later told me she had sat in her car in the driveway for nearly an hour, alternating between crying and angry phone calls. I was thankful to have been at a therapy appointment during her visit. She began reaching out through friends and family, telling different versions of the story to different people. To some, she claimed I had thrown her out. To others, she admitted leaving, but said she had immediately regretted it. Her parents, who had always liked me, called to express their disappointment in their daughter's choices and to check if I was all right. Exactly 1 week after she left, I received a lengthy email from Maria. Unlike her text messages and voicemails, this was carefully composed, seemingly designed to elicit maximum sympathy. "Shane, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Jason isn't who I thought he was. He got angry when his credit card was declined at dinner last night. I realized I left a good man who truly cared for me for someone who only cares about appearances. Our apartment feels cold and empty without you. I miss our Sunday pancakes. And the way you always made me feel safe. Please give me another chance. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. The lifestyle I thought I wanted feels meaningless without you." I forwarded the email to Thomas without reply, but something in me shifted as I read it. Not toward reconciliation, but toward closure. The desperate attempts to return weren't motivated by love, but by the harsh reality of consequences. Maria wasn't missing me. She was missing the security and stability I had provided. And that wasn't enough reason to rebuild what had been so thoroughly broken. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life one piece at a time. Thomas had recommended a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma, and our weekly sessions became a cornerstone of my recovery. Dr. Lynn helped me understand that Maria's actions reflected her own values and shortcomings, not my worth as a partner. "You provided stability, respect, and genuine love," Dr. Lynn told me during one session. "The fact that she couldn't recognize the value in that says nothing about you and everything about her." Gradually, I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. Maria had never particularly enjoyed game nights with my college buddies or the hiking trips that had once been a regular part of my life. Reclaiming these relationships and activities felt like recovering pieces of myself that had been set aside. I rediscovered old hobbies and explored new ones. Photography had been a passion in college that I had abandoned due to lack of time. I invested in a good camera and began taking weekend trips to capture New England landscapes. The focus required for good photography became almost meditative, forcing me to be present rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. I also started keeping a journal, tracking my emotional recovery. The early entries were raw with pain and anger, but as weeks passed, I noticed a shift. There were more mentions of good days, of moments of peace, of small pleasures rediscovered. 6 weeks after Maria left, I wrote my first entry that didn't mention her at all. A support group for people going through divorce provided another source of healing. Hearing others' stories put my own experience in perspective. Some had endured far worse betrayals, others had lost much more financially. All were in the process of rebuilding. Their resilience inspired my own. Most importantly, I was learning to be comfortable alone again. The silence of the house, once oppressive, became peaceful. I rearranged furniture, painted the bedroom a different color, and gradually reclaimed the space as entirely my own. It was no longer a place of memories but of new possibilities. The divorce proceedings moved forward efficiently, largely due to the strength of the prenuptial agreement and the clear evidence of infidelity. Maria's initial attempts to contest the terms were quickly abandoned when her lawyer likely advised her of the futility of her position. During our one required court appearance, Maria looked markedly different from the confident woman who had left me. Her designer outfit couldn't hide the strain in her face or the dark circles under her eyes. She attempted to make eye contact several times, but I maintained a polite, detached demeanor, speaking only when directly addressed by the judge. The judge, after reviewing the evidence and the prenuptial agreement, ruled strongly in my favor. The terms of this agreement are clear, and the evidence of infidelity is substantial, she stated. Miss Walker will retain only the assets she brought into the marriage, minus her share of joint debts and accounting for funds inappropriately withdrawn prior to separation. Maria's claim of emotional abuse, a desperate last attempt to gain leverage, was dismissed for lack of evidence. In fact, text messages I had provided showed a pattern of emotional manipulation on her part, not mine. The judge's comments made it clear she saw through the attempt. By the time we signed the final papers 3 months after separation, Maria's relationship with Jason had already ended. According to mutual friends, their breakup had been explosive and public, occurring during a dinner at an upscale restaurant when she discovered he had been seeing someone else. The fantasy lifestyle she had abandoned our marriage for had lasted less than a season. As I focused on healing emotionally, my professional life flourished unexpectedly. The Chicago presentation had indeed secured the major client, bringing significant revenue to my company. My boss, impressed with my ability to maintain professionalism despite personal turmoil, recommended me for a substantial promotion. 6 months after Maria's departure, I became the youngest director in the company's history. With the increased income, I decided to make changes that were for me alone. I sold the house that contained too many memories and purchased a modern apartment in a better neighborhood with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. It was a space that had never known Maria, decorated in a style that was entirely my own. I rebuilt my savings and expanded my investment portfolio, working with a financial advisor to create an even more secure future. The irony wasn't lost on me that the very quality Maria had criticized, my financial caution, had protected me during our divorce and positioned me for greater success afterward. With newfound financial security and emotional stability, I indulged in experiences I had always wanted but had deferred. I took a solo trip to Japan, something Maria had never been interested in. The 2 weeks spent exploring Tokyo and Kyoto were transformative, reminding me of my capability for independent adventure and joy. New friendships entered my life as well, people who appreciated authenticity over appearances. Through a community volunteer program building homes for veterans, I met a group of like-minded individuals who valued contribution over consumption. These connections, based on shared values rather than social status, felt more genuine than many of the relationships that had surrounded my marriage. 8 months after Maria left, I attended a dinner party at Alan's new house. He had mentioned inviting a colleague he thought I might enjoy meeting, but I had gone with no expectations beyond a pleasant evening with friends. Laura was a pediatrician who had recently moved to Boston from Chicago. She had an easy laugh, curly brown hair that refused to stay in place, and a conversation style that was both intellectually stimulating and unpretentious. We talked throughout dinner about everything from healthcare policy to favorite breakfast cereals. Unlike the carefully curated conversations I had become accustomed to with Maria and her friends, this felt refreshingly authentic. Laura spoke passionately about her patients but admitted the challenges of her profession. She asked thoughtful questions and listened genuinely to my answers. We exchanged numbers at the end of the evening, and I found myself calling her the next day. Our first date was nothing extravagant, just coffee at a local bookstore cafe. It extended into browsing books together, then a walk along the Charles River, and finally dinner at a small Ethiopian restaurant neither of us had tried before. What began as friendship gradually developed into something more. Unlike my whirlwind romance with Maria, this relationship built slowly and thoughtfully. We discussed values early and openly. Laura valued financial responsibility and had her own carefully considered approach to building security. She respected my career, but was more impressed by my volunteer work than my title or salary. Most importantly, Laura appreciated me for exactly who I was. There were no subtle suggestions for change, no comparisons to others with more prestigious positions or possessions. She found joy in simple pleasures, from farmers' market Sundays to impromptu living room dance parties. For the first time, I understood what a relationship built on mutual respect and shared values truly felt like. The lessons from my failed marriage, painful as they were, had prepared me to recognize and appreciate authentic connection when I found it. 1 year to the day after I had returned early from Chicago to find Maria gone, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sun set over the harbor. Laura was inside, preparing dinner with the easy comfort of someone who belonged in my space. The date's significance wasn't lost on me, but it no longer carried the pain it once had. I reflected on the journey of the past year, from devastation to rebuilding to unexpected joy. The man I had become through this experience was stronger, more self-aware, and paradoxically more capable of genuine intimacy than before. By losing what I thought was essential, I had discovered what truly mattered. Success, I realized, was never about impressing others with visible symbols of wealth or status. True success lay in creating a life aligned with personal values, surrounding yourself with people who appreciate your authentic self, and having the courage to rebuild when necessary. In finding someone who valued character over status, substance over appearance, I had discovered a relationship far richer than what I had lost. The security I had always prioritized wasn't just about financial stability, but emotional reliability, shared values, and mutual respect. The painful experience that began that day a year ago had ultimately led to a better life than I could have imagined. Not because of material improvements, though, those had come, but because of the authentic living it had forced me to embrace. Have you ever experienced a painful loss that eventually led to unexpected growth? Share your story of resilience in the comments below. If this journey of rebuilding resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find this message of hope. Subscribe to hear more real-life experiences of overcoming challenges, and share this video with someone who might be going through their own difficult time right now. Thank you for your support. And remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far better. Wishing you strength in your own journey. Tạo đoạn mô tả chuẩn SEO YouTube dài 155. Từ cho nội dung câu chuyện trên thêm 5. Lần từ khóa relationship betrayal.